just wanted to share a little bit about how come suddenly, I've become this kind of mouthpiece and sprouting all this yoga stuff. Because most of the friends that I've known in my life, who I've grown up with, they know me as a pretty crazy guy, I suppose. Musician, played in bands, done all kinds of things. But a lot of you may or may not know that during all of this time, I've been, from the age of 19, I've been basically, all that's been my focus my whole life has been yoga. Having met some really interesting people early in my life when I was around 19. Not to say that I've been an angel all my life, basically. A lot of you will know that. The whole trick for a yogi, is to get into life completely, go through the whole thing, experiencing everything, and coming out the other side without getting snagged or caught up in anything. When I was 19, I met one of the people I met was a saint, recognized as a saint in India, Swami Suttananda Bharati. And he kind of was like walking into a room with the sun. Can you imagine, if you can imagine such a thing? And it never left me, and at that time, being young, I couldn't go to India, first of all, because of the cultural boycott against South Africa, preventing white South Africans from going to India. When I finally was able to go in 2004, having gone totally into business and done everything, and as a musician become a composer and composed all kinds of music, and sung in rock bands and gone completely crazy. As much as you can, I went as crazy as much as you can go crazy in the world. I did everything, which is the beauty right now, because nobody can ever come along to me and say, "Did you try this? Have you tried this?" So having been through the whole gamut of experiences, to be able to come out the other end intact, or relatively intact. Finally, I decided to, when I was able to, a friend of mine said, "Why don't you come to my guru's ashram?" And in 2004, I went to India. It got to a point where I decided, oh, wow, do I have to do another piece of music? So it was trying to reinvent the wheel. It got to the point where I couldn't anymore, basically. And there was something missing in my life, and I wanted to find out more about the yoga because it had such an impact on me at an early age. And I went in search of knowledge, thirsty for solutions and understanding. And I went from one side of India to the next, from north, south, east, west. I went all over India, meeting as many people as I could in the yoga. It's called Sanatana Dharma, all the different sampradayas, paramparas, traditional lineages, if you like. Until I met my master, who I met in Johannesburg, believe it or not. Swami Suttananda, another Suttananda. The first one I met was Swami Suttananda Bharati. Now I met Swami Suttananda Saraswati, who, when I met him in Johannesburg, we had dinner together and we had a nice time, and he was such a normal, ordinary guy. At the end of the dinner and in the evening, I was going back to India anyway, so he said to me, "Why don't you come and do the course on my ashram? With me in my ashram?" And I said, "Well, what is the course on?" And he went, Anyway, we'd had such a great evening together. I decided to make arrangements and make my whole trip back to India around this visiting his ashram, and I went and studied with him for a month. Didn't know what he was talking about. He was talking all about self, Atma, and finally, after about 10 days, the penny dropped, and I realized how profound these teachings of self-knowledge, which is what Swamiji was teaching, are. And I never stopped going back to the ashram. I'd been visiting all sorts of other ashrams and other lineages and so on, but this was the mother lode, basically. So I didn't stop, and I kept going back. From 2005, end of 2004, 2011, I studied with my master. And eventually I joined the 2-year course on the ashram. He invited me to join with these young guys, young Indian guys in their 20s. And we went through 2 years of self-knowledge teachings, non-stop, every day, 8:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the afternoon. There's no Saturday, Sunday, you just keep going every day. Until he turned around to me one day after a number of years and he said to me, "What kind of fire do you need under your ass to get you to start teaching this knowledge?" And I looked at him and I said, "You guys have been teaching this stuff forever. I'll just make a mess out of it." You know, I actually said, "You guys have been teaching this stuff forever and it still made no difference to anybody. We still behave like baboons. So what difference am I going to make besides making a mess out of it? What difference am I going to make?" Anyway, a year later, same thing happened. This time I went with my wife, Rachel, who had decided to come and participate in the course with me. And he said to Rachel and me, we were both sitting there together, he said, "What kind of fire do you need to have under your ass to get you to start teaching?" And then he said to Rachel, "Get this guy to start teaching." So we started teaching this knowledge 10 years ago. We started traveling around the globe, going everywhere, and it was really interesting because I could go to America. We went in one hit, we did America, Bali, we taught in India, we taught self-knowledge wherever we went, as well as the yoga that we share. And I could get a huge insight into the whole yoga circus, if you want, worldwide, globally. Teaching on Berlin Festival of Yoga, the Bali Spirit Festival of Yoga in Bali, going all over the place, going to California, New York, England, Europe, Barcelona. We did everything. So it's given me a good insight and a friend of mine said to me as well, who had spent 40 years in India, he said to me, because I asked him, "What do you think? Should I start teaching this knowledge?" He said to me, "Well, if you don't start articulating it, then it's been a waste." Okay? So since that time, we've been sharing this download, if you like, of self-knowledge, which is, how can you explain what self-knowledge is? It's just the teachings that have gone on, no matter what the civilization, no matter what age, these teachings have survived, right? Shankara, Adi Shankara, which is the lineage of my teacher Swami Saraswati, Sudananda Saraswati, the teaching of Shankara, that's the lineage. Shankara revived these teachings 2,500 years ago. 2,500 years ago, not centuries, 2,500 years ago. They got lost again after Shankara revived them because the priests thought they would keep them so secret. They became so secret, became secret to themselves. It became a lost teaching. Then the modernists came along, including my teacher, Swami Suttananda, and his teacher, Swami Dayananda, and they revived the teachings again now for the 21st century, for us to survive. Why survive? Because these teachings teach the eternal nature of the human being, you and me. We are not limited by anything. The moment we feel any limitation, we go crazy, right? This is why we're going crazy with this COVID thing, right? Any limitation is extraordinary to us, right? Why? Because existence is absolutely effortless. And it's always been. And when it becomes a problem, suddenly, and we have to start making an effort, we don't like it, right? So what is effortless? Existence is effortless. Being the timeless, eternal nature of the human being is effortless. What takes effort is being an individual. So these teachings teach all about how we are not our individuality. We are the timeless absolute. We are that eternal, ever-existing nature, just like creation. Eternal, timeless, ever-existing. There's no such thing as limitation for the human being. So if you want to share in your own timeless nature, please join us for some of these classes where because my teacher was a PhD in English, he taught me how to teach self-knowledge in English. So we use as little Sanskrit as possible. Also, just the last little bit, these teachings, I decided, have to work in everyday life. Otherwise, they're useless, right? So they have to work for you and me. They have to work in the society that we find ourselves in, the civilization that we find ourselves in. Which is why I'm not wearing an orange robe. I'm not wearing any funny beads, nothing. I've got one little bead, but you can't even see it. Anyway, it's about existing, and in this time, and this knowledge and this wisdom has to work for every human being, which, having married recently, we basically, Rachel and I, want to share this wisdom and this knowledge with everybody because it works. No matter what age you're living in, this wisdom has worked for the human being. So if you want to join us, please feel free to contact us on the link below.